Arthur Dubois, Cess Ledger entry, dated the 17th of October, 1923. The missing numeral on Elm Street, S41st house plaque proved stubborn, not a misprint. The number 41, obscured by peeling, ochre paint on the stucco facade, left only an unnatural rectangle where it should reside. Weathered bricks stretched behind it, damp stones sighing with the season's first persistent drizzle. The street remained unnaturally still. No children, laughter from the vacant lot across. No distant train whistle, only the relentless patter on the tin roof of the abandoned bakery, a sound that felt too loud in the hushed afternoon. Arthur adjusted his spectacles, the lenses fogging slightly with condensation, his usual calm yielding to a prickle at the nape of his neck. He denoted the anomaly on his weekly inventory route for the Grandview Property Trust, a routine task usually devoid of tension. This was a different kind of absence. He traced the empty space with a gloved finger, the rough texture of the stone unexpectedly cold. Reaching for his pocketbook, Arthur noticed the ginger cat huddled under the hawthorn bush. It wasn't T-local. Usually the alley cats avoided the silent houses. The cat lifted its head, a slow, deliberate movement, its eyes the unsettling green of stagnant water. It watched him. Arthur felt a momentary discomfort, but the creature showed no aggression, only an unnerving stillness. He turned away, focusing again on the house. A faint scent, like whetstone and something older, faintly metallic, drifted from the doorway. He stepped closer, his boots sinking slightly into the muddy soil of the unkept garden. As he glanced back towards the cat, it had vanished. Only the wilting hawthorn berries remained, their deep purple bruised against the grey. Arthur retrieved the ledger, intending to note the plaque as disrepair. Instead, something glinted in the damp, patchy grass near the neglected flower bed. A small, tarnished brass object for a jester S bell, its surface pitted with age, missing its clapper. It felt cold even through his glove. The lettering on the bell was faint, fluffy compliant. Below it the number *41*, perfectly etched. Arthur froze. The bell fit precisely into the empty space on the plaque, the mark made clear by a century of moisture. Yet the plaque itself bore no such mark. Only the shape of the missing number. The air no longer felt merely still. It felt 20-weighted, a physical pressure against his eardrums. He heard the soft, insistent twin tap, tap-tap of the bell against the stone path beside him, originating from nowhere. He hadn't T-dropped it. The historical record entry, continuing from the 17th of October. The bell was not mine. I checked my pockets, my satchel. It was the only bell I'd seen in that vicinity. The jester S bell lay on the path beside the house. I examined the brass near the *41* mark. The etching matched the bell found on the ground. I documented the brass and *41* on the house face. Question remains. What does the word von Compliunt mean here? The cat appeared again, perched on the highest step of the front porch, watching the empty house across the street. Its eyes held the same stillness as the quiet. The house doors, dark and forbidding, showed no sign of movement, yet Arthur felt an undeniable impression. Fighty compliant? The word, etched small and deliberate on the bell, now echoed in his own mind with the sound of the sue-tap, tap, tap, growing clearer. He began taking notes in his ledger with a trembling hand. The scent of wet stone and old metal deepened, the persistent drizzle seeming to slow, as if the weather itself was observing the inscription on the door of the house, numbered *41*. Arthur Dubois, S. Ledger entry, dated the 18th of October, 1923. The house on Elm Street. Number 41 stood as it did yesterday. The plague was no longer merely absent. It existed as a negative space in the brickwork. The bell remained beside the path, yet its Tyvid compliant etching now mirrored the *41* on the house facade. The drizzle ceased at dawn, leaving the street unnervingly dry. At precisely 3:14 p.m., the front door to house number 41 opened. Not ajar. No wind, no visible pressure on the frame. Just open. Arthur stood 20 paces away, ledger held rigid against his chest, the leather casing cool with his perspiration. The ginger cat sat atop the porch step, unblinking, its green eyes fixed on the doorway. Nothing emerged. The silence had a texture, slick, cold as unpolished stone underfoot. Arthur's fingers tightened on the ledger, the pen sinking into the paper with a sound like cracking brittle bone. He noted the time, the opening, the absence of anything in the shadowed threshold. The scent of wet stone thickened, laced with a new note, iron-dusted soil. He approached the bell. It lay on the path, unharmed. He lifted it. It was warm, not room temperature, but alive with a subtle internal heat that seeped through his glove. The brass felt different, denser than before. The etching of Compliunt pulsed faintly, the letters seemingly softer at the edges. The cat, as tail twitched, a single movement. Arthur stepped closer to the open doorway. The air inside smelled of long closed linen and dry earth. Dust motes hung motionless in the weak light that filtered through the opening. He heard no sound from within, just the absence of sound where sound should be, a vacuum pressing against his eardrums. He lowered his head, peering into the shadowed square. The space was empty, bare floorboards exposed. Then he saw it, scrawled in the damp dust along the inner edge of the doorway, just beyond the threshold. A crude 40 feet, followed by a smaller looping asterisk, 41 asterisk. The 40 had been stamped into the wood, the lines deep and clean, like a maker's mark. Not drawn, carved. The same asterisk, 41 asterisk as on the plaque, the same on the bell. The cat watched him, tail, tip twitching again, its stillness absolute. Arthur forced his trembling hand to write. C and 41 stamped inside threshold. Door opened 3:14 p.m. No draft. Door opened on own. Asterisk, he felt no fear, only a cold, growing certainty that this was being recorded not by him, but 24 him. The bell in his hand grew hotter, the 40 Compliunt etching now visibly shifting, the letters subtly rearranging. The air thickened with the scent of old iron, making his throat constrict. The house refused to yield what it hid. It only offered its absences as instructions. The cat uncurled itself slightly, a low, soft sound escaping its throat, like a sigh of dried leaves caught in wind. Arthur had never heard a cat make that noise. He looked down at the bell. The word 30 Compliunt was now 20 Compliunt. The bell was teaching him to read correctly. The house watched, its empty entrance waiting for his next act of compliance. He placed the bell gently back where it had been. The tap, tap, tap started again. Not against stone gloves. The sound was coming from the belled inside, his pocket. Arthur stood paralyzed as the house remained open, its promise a silent, hollow command waiting in the dust and the green eyes of the cat that had never blinked. Arthur Dubois. As ledger entry dated the 19th of October, 1923, the bell's sinew hum resonated directly within my left temporal lobe, a subsonic vibration pressing against bone. I felt it through my spine as I walked, a persistent thrumming that turned my thoughts into leaden sludge. The words in the ledger blurred, my hand dragging the pen like it was stuck in tar. The bell sat upon the step of house number 41, precisely where I deplaced it, but the brass glowed faintly warm enough to make the morning mist lift from its surface. Compliunt was now 20 Compliunt, stamped into the bell itself. The letters carved deeper than the etching. The ginger cat remained on the porch step, head tilted at a precise angle, the same gaze fixed on the doorway. Its fur looked oddly matted, wet as if it had been rained upon during the unseasonable dry spell. The absence in the doorway was more pronounced. The empty square of space where the door should be felt less like a void and more like a drawn breath held too long. At 3:14 p.m., the same precise hour as yesterday, the shadow within the threshold swelled. Not a figure, a deeper darkness, denser than the surrounding gloom, layered with the faint metallic taste of crushed pennies on my tongue. The cat blinked once. Slow, deliberate. Not a flicker of the eyelid, but a shifting of the eye itself, like two pebbles rotating in shallow water. A small drop of dew impossibly fell from its jowl onto the porch step. The cat turned its head fully towards the doorway, a single silent hissy escaping its throat. The sound of sand shifting over glass. I noted the time, the door stillness, the cat's unnatural stillness. My pen point snapped within the inkwell. The ledger smelled suddenly of damp woolen brine, the scent clinging to the paper as if it had been soaked in that long, closed hallway. I tried to turn the page, but the paper resisted, becoming gritty, as if packed with fine, dry silt. The seeker and asterisk, 41 asterisk, were now subtly different. The second had sharpened, a blade-like protrusion, while the asterisk 41 asterisk remained smooth. The bell began to tick, tick-tick-kick. Now, a rapid, steady rhythm inside my coat pocket. 3, 1, 4, 3, 1, 4. It matched the time on my silver pocket watch, which I had no memory of checking. The metal case was cold against my skin, but the vibrations pulsed directly into my joints. The house offered no further illumination. No sound emerged from its shadowed throat, only the slow, patient drip of something unseen into the silent house. The cat stood, not by the door, but 20 towards the threshold, one paw extended as if stepping through air. It stared at the dark square as if seeing through it. The bell in my pocket vibrated fiercely, aligning the rhythm with the cat. Slow blink. A small familiar tremor crept into my hand. I stopped resisting the pull toward the step. My right foot moved. The ledger held close, felt heavy with an age too slow to measure. The brass bell in my pocket heated to the point where I felt no cold, only a deep, living warmth spreading through my coat lining. The house's threshold demanded this compliance. I understood the meaning of the word furting compliant. It was the key that unlocked the unspoken requirement. My fingers fumbled with the second button. The air thickened with the scent of wet stone and old metal, as if the house itself was breathing. The cat watched as I undressed. I was becoming part of the ledger entry. I felt the house hunger for my silence. It was the only language left that made sense. The silence wasn't empty. It was waiting for my next act of understanding. I took another step toward the unlit door, leaving the ledger behind. The house absorbed the absence of paper and the warmth of my undressed skin. The thortic tick, tick of the bell inside my pocket now matched my pulse. I stepped through the empty door. The shadow was no longer empty. It was filled with a perfect, waiting nothing. My own ledger entry, unfinished, would now be an entry 30, in Tufa, the silence itself. The cat followed me in, closing the threshold behind me with its tail, not as a form of leaving, but as a closing of a book left open, its pages still fresh for the next word. The house, for the first time, was silent. Arthur Dubois. Ledger entry dated the 20th of October, 1923. The ledger disintegrated to dust on the porch steps, the ink bleaching away where rain should have fallen. Only the brass bell, its tiving compliant, now a sunken, smoothed impression, remained in my pocket, pulsing against my thigh like a living knot. The ginger cat sat where I left it, atop the porch step, observing the empty space where the door had been. Its green eyes held no recognition, only the stillness of stone. The house demanded the ledger. Surrender. I felt the absence of paper as a physical ache, the momentary void before my memory claimed the next word. The cat, us fur began to absorb the morning light, the matted patches drying into brittle patches like discarded paper. It raised its head, not towards the threshold, but towards the empty air above it. Its gaze fixed on the vapor rising from the bell. Whose surface? The brass radiating an amber glow, hot enough to blur the morning mist. I could taste the heat on my tongue, dry and cloying like old dust in a forgotten cellar. The cat's tail twitched once, a single precise movement. It did not look at me. It looked through me towards the house, as unyielding shell. I felt the collar of my shirt tighten, a slow, insistent pressure on my neck as if being measured. The bell, as vibration deepened, no longer inside my pocket, but etching itself into the bone of my shoulder. I lifted my hand to my throat, but my fingers traced the imprint on the wood of the porch step. The 30 and asterisk, 41 asterisk, sharpened and carved, into the porch itself. My skin bore the same faint pattern, warm to the touch but cool like stone. The cat blinked, the movement utterly silent, and its eyes seemed to slide across my chest where the sortie now traced beneath my skin. The house had started marking me. The ledger had been the map. Now the map was becoming the land. The bell, estatic, ticka-ticka, shifted, 3, 1, 4, the house's rhythm, mingling with the slow, wet scrape of stone against stone inside the wall. Not a sound made by air, but a sound the house sighed against its own bones. I turned toward the threshold, not to step through, but to trace the footy on my own chest with the heel of my hand. The pressure at my throat eased, replaced by a slow, deep hum resonating from the house's foundations. The cat padded forward, not in step with me, but precisely a pace ahead, its movements fluid and silent as water finding its path through packed earth. Its head dipped, not in submission, but as if hearing something beneath the hum. A low liquid fring-plink echoed from within the house, like stone dropping into dry earth. I knelt. The damp wood cool beneath my knees. The cat pressed its cheek against my forearm, its fur still warm from the bell's heat. Its breath puffed a soft, dry scent. Nothing like wet cat, but the smell of old dust kicked from a sun-baked floorboard. It turned its head and looked at the house, then back at me, as if waiting for instruction. I understood. Fofi compliance was no longer a word, but a photactile truth. It was the slow acceptance of the marks. My fingers moved to the second button of my shirt, pulling it free with a sound like old thread giving way. The house did not offer light. It absorbed the failing grey day. The cat, whiskers brushed against my bare skin, cold and still, before it turned its head fully towards the threshold, tail lifting like a slow breath. It walked through the emptiness, not stepping into shadow, but into a space where the air itself coalesced. I followed, and the bell in my pocket ceased its hum. The house had no need for sound now. The ledger was buried in dust on the steps. The house was satisfied with the silence I carried within me, and the cat, the only other reader of the new page, walked ahead, the only witness to the next line already written in the quiet dark. The house did not need to breathe because its breath had become me. Arthur Dubois' ledger was a ghost in the porch dust. His skin, where the sortie and *41* now grew beneath the surface like bark beneath snow, felt the constant, slow pull of the house. Soundation. The tick, 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 tick had ceased, replaced by the deep, wet thrum of the structure itself, a sound resonating in his jawbone rather than his ears. He stood in the unlit corridor, his shirt open, the marks on his chest cool as river stones in the afternoon, failing light. The ginger cat sat near his feet, not watching him, but watching the space beyond where the door should be. Its fur now the dull, sun-bleached color of old parchment, dry to the touch. The air tasted of crushed limestone and stagnant water. Arthur reached for the bell in his pocket. It no longer hummed but pulsed with a steady internal warmth, now radiating directly through his leg. The house was knitting itself through him, the walls yielding like softened wax. He touched the wall beside him, stone yet yielding under his fingertips, leaving a slight impression, like pressing a finger into warm clay. The sunken pattern glowed faintly beneath his skin where the wall met his chest, a slow, living pulse. He could hear the slow trip of something collecting in the floorboards. Not water, but the sound of bones dissolving into the earth. The cat stretched, arching its back in the unlit corner, its spine clicking softly, a dry internal sound like a beetle moving beneath stone. It did not move toward the threshold. It moved through, it vanishing as if sinking into the very darkness that absorbed the light. Arthur stepped toward the open space, his bare feet pressing into the damp, uneven floor. The house had filled to its seams with silence, not empty, but packed, like a casket sealed with unspoken things. He felt the weight of it press deeper into his own bones as he stepped beyond the threshold line he now carried within him. His fingers found the chart, tracing its cold, sharp edge. It was no longer a mark. It was his new axis. The cat reappeared in the shadow of the empty hallway, standing precisely where the wall met the floor, its green eyes fixed on Arthur's bare chest, no longer still but seeming to shifty, like light glinting off stagnant water. It lifted its front paw and placed it against Arthur Sintwithithik and the pads leaving no mark. But the house seemed to exhale a single slow breath, the sound thick as wet cloth drawn from a shallow grave. Arthur understood. The bell had stopped vibrating, but the house was now the steady, insistent pulse. He raised his hand, not toward his own face, but toward the wall opposite. Where his fingers touched the stone, the pattern emerged, not carved, but growing from the surface, warm and alive. The *41. Asterisk bloomed like a wound knitting closed. The house did not require sound. It required completion. Arthur's breath hitched as the footy shui on his chest began to burn, a clean, sharp heat that spread down his ribs. He stepped forward, into the precise center of the hallway, his bare foot meeting the exact spot where the footy siku now pulsed on the floor. The cat watched, its stillness absolute, as the final *41 etched itself into his right palm. He felt the letter not in his skin, but in the marrow, deep and final. The house sighed, its completion. The sound a deep vibration in the teeth, like stones settling into perfect stillness. The air no longer carried scent, only the clean, dry taste of exposed earth beneath a starless sky. The ledger was not the map, it was the thing being mapped. Arthur Dubois no longer stood outside the house. He had become the quiet, necessary absence in the brickwork, the only reader of the entry now written in the very bone of the silence. The ginger cat vanished, its absence the final punctuation point. The house was done. Arthur Dubois' ledger entry dated the 21st of October, 1923. My left hand no longer bears the mark of the bell. The *41 etched into the webbing between my fingers has softened to a faint warmth, like sun-baked stone beneath bare feet. The house breathes against my bones now, a slow, wet pressure that aligns with my own heartbeat, no longer separate, but harmonic. I stand in the corridor where the door once was, the floor smooth as old teeth beneath my feet. The ginger cat is gone. Its absence is a precise shape in the air, a dry scent of sun, bleached fur lingering where its form should have been, not a trace of footfall, not a single fur hair. The house absorbed its stillness with me. The air tastes of crushed geode and ancient rain trapped in sealed walls. I trace the safety on my own collarbone with a thumb. It's grown into my skin, a cool, raised ridge no longer carved but shoody grown, its edges blurring into the living tissue. Where it meets my throat, the skin feels porous, as if the house is breathing through me. A small drip collects on the floor beside my right foot. Not water, but minute crystals of groundstone, falling slowly from a spot high in the vaulted ceiling, as if the very mortar was dissolving into silence. I hear it collect in the damp wood, a dry flink-plink like tiny gravel dropping into stillness. The house began marking me at Elm Street. Now it has finished folding me into its architecture. I felt the completion settle into my marrow when the final *41* pulsed into my palm yesterday. No more ledger was ever needed. The house required only that I become the silent component between the walls, the FFT compliance made tangible. My skin holds the house's shape now, its cool pressure the only sensation beside the constant thrum in my teeth. I turn my head slowly. The corridor doesn't end in shadow, but in the precise angle where a wall would join a ceiling. A missing right angle, perfect and waiting. It feels correct. I lift my hand to the wall. It yields beneath my fingers like warm clay, leaving a slight faint impression where the sooty pattern now spreads across the stone itself. The house is not a space I inhabit. It is the space that now inhabits me perfectly contained within my new skin. The drip from above grows heavier, forming a small, smooth pool where my feet stand. The crystals dissolve, becoming the same cool substance as the floor. My bare foot presses into the spot, the house acknowledging its own shape within me. I am the bridge between thresholds, the protoiet between the numbers. I do not hear the cat's return. It would be a sound too loud, shattering the house, its essential contained silence. The house has no need for sound once it becomes the thing that requires silence. My own breathing has become shallow, resonant within my chest cavity, the sound the house would make if it had lungs. The collar of my shirt hangs loose, unfurled like a blank page, revealing the suet, tracing my chest in deep, cool ridges. I do not move to fasten it. I do not wish to disrupt the house. Slow, perfect containment. The fort plink, plinky dissolving stone slows. The wall beneath my hand no longer yields, holding its own shape against my body, emerging so complete that I feel the subtle coolness of the bricks through my skin. This is not absorption. It is the becoming for necessary. The house requires that I no longer fear its absence. It requires that I know, in the bone-deep silence, that the only thing left to mark me was already within me all along. The absence behind me, the door no longer missing, but Twifatov Tifif, the walls, is the only thing that has ever been true. I feel my right hand curl softly, the old shape of a bell held gently between thumb and forefinger, though the bell has ceased to exist. The only vibration now is the house itself, pulsing gently through my skin, perfectly still. The house is complete. Arthur Dubois, as ledger entry, dated the 22nd of October, 1923. The house no longer breathes against my bones. My bones are the house breathing. The sooky pattern on my sternum radiates a permanent chill, the same coolness as rain. Slicked stone at dawn. The house absorbed the final stone drip yesterday. The hollow beneath my feet is now the precise vessel for the silence it requires. The ginger cat reappears near the base of the stairwell where the wall meets the floor. It is not the same cat. Its fur is the pallid, brittle texture of old newspaper, dry enough to flake under the slightest pressure. Its eyes hold the unsettling stillness of pond scum beneath a glass jar, the green depth unchanging. It watches the space between two lower floorboards where the dissolving stone pool has left a smooth, obsidian ring. The cat does not move. It's simply 20 she, its stillness a counterpoint to the slow, wet through that now resonates in my molars. The ledger, as absence, feels like a missing limb, missing not because it was taken, but because it was taken, but because it was fulfilled. A single dry fuvdit tick echoes from the ceiling, not the bell, but the house itself marking the hour. It is the sound a water drop makes before hitting stone in an empty well. I note this, though I understand notes are unnecessary now. My fingers lift to the cool ridge of Sunkon. Beneath my throat, it pulses faintly when I press against it. The wall to my left yields under my palm, not yielding but toughenille maha, matching the angle of the Sufan pattern into its surface. The house does not require a door because it has no concept of voids. The space where the house is the shape of Tumbai within its bones. The cat, its tail twitches, a rapid, mechanical motion like a dry leaf grinding against stone. Its green eyes flicker, fruity not toward me, but toward the empty hall beyond the frontward wall. There, the *41 growth has spread beyond my palm, now glowing faintly through the skin of my left forearm. A quiet internal light. The house demands the final texture of its own fabric. It needs my skin to hold the memory of the cat. Dryness. I turn toward the stairwell, my bare foot pressing the suki, in the floor with each step. The cat follows, not walking, but twas sliding across the stone in the direction of the unseen threshold. It approaches the precise spot where the *41 mark now pulses beneath my arm. It lifts one paw, placing it against the warm skin on my forearm. The pads are cool, dry, and leave no impression, yet the house deepens it into a quiet vibrational hum that now runs parallel to the beat of my heart. I understand the true meaning of foodie compliance. It is the acceptance of becoming a vessel. The shape left behind when the filling is perfected. The stone beneath my feet feels the same weight as the house, past walls. The cat's head lifts. It stares at me with unblinking green eyes, no longer focused, but holding the shape of something the house needs to release. The fuffa-tiplink of dissolving stone has stopped. The floor is a perfect, smooth surface. I sink to my knees, not as a supplication, but as an alignment. My fingers find the rising sunku on my chest. It begins to glow a faint, cool light. The house sighs through my spine, a sound like limestone grinding into dust at the exact hour of 3:14. The cat walks onto my outstretched palm, its fur brushing against the sorti with startling dryness. It stays there for 3 precise breaths. Then it steps through my skin, not away from me, but tumto, the part of me now solidified as house. Its fur falls away like dead skin, leaving behind a single perfectly dry hair that imprints itself into the sunti on my sternum. I do not feel the missing hair. I feel it time become the final outline of the pattern. The house no longer requires sound for its completeness. It has absorbed the cat. Stry absence and now holds the entire fabric within me. My right hand curls not into a fist, but around the silence the cat's footfall made. The ledger is not forgotten. It is the bone beneath the stone that breathes with the house. I rise. The floor beneath my feet is warm stone, but the siki on my chest remains cool. The house is no longer a shelter for absence. Itifi absent, the absence made visible, the only sentence ever written. It requires no more entry. I am the final necessary word. The cat's dry hair lies against my skin, its memory faint as a half-remembered touch. The house knows. It has always known. Arthur Dubois. As ledger entry, dated the 23rd of October, 1923. The house no longer breathes through me. I breathe its slow, wet rhythm. The surki on my sternum is the only map now, the cool ridge where my heart's echo meets stone. The floor beneath my feet is no longer hollow. It says the precise weight of the house's body, a solid pressure holding my bones in alignment. The ginger cat's absence has lost its shape. It is simply the silence between stones, a dryness I now carry as my own texture. The cat, single dry hair, imprinted into the sufi on my sternum, has become the only evidence of loss. It does not fade, but thrums faintly, a vibration felt in my molars when the house shifts. I stand at the wall where the house breathes deepest into my skin. The *41 on my forearm glows softly, its internal light a pale gold against the shadow where skin meets bone. The house has no need for sound to confirm its presence. It speaks through the pressure in my joints, a language felt in the slow grinding of stone against itself. At precisely 3:14 p.m., the entire house shivers. A single deep vibration through the floorboards, up my legs, settling in my skull as a dry crack, like sun, bleached bone splitting. I feel no surprise. It is the hour. It is the sound of completion. My fingers press against the wall beside me, not to test, but to trace the sushi that now weaves through the stone, running from floor to ceiling. It is the path the house took to become me. The wall yields only to pressure, molding the outline of my mark. I have learned to wait for the house's next word, but it offers none. It offers simply its presence, now total. I turn my head toward the old threshold. No longer an opening, but a healed wound. The absence there has become the only reality. I no longer look toward. The house. I am the house. The air tastes of packed earth and dry riverbeds. I lift my left hand, the one marked with the soft asterisk 41 asterisk. The house responds by tightening the suki at my throat, a slow, deliberate pressure like a thumbprint on damp clay. It is not a request. It is my own structure acknowledging itself. The vibration deepens, resonating in my joints like a tuning fork struck against stone. I feel no desire for air. I feel only the need to hold my own shape. The drip from the ceiling, the sound of stone dissolving into silence, has become my heartbeat. It falls in the exact spot where my palm touches the floor, a rhythmic fun-plink-plink, syncing with the house thrum. My hand has molded the stone. It is now a basin holding the house, whose memory of my absence. The fruit-I-plink continues, a dry water in the silence between breaths. I sink to my knees, not for rest, but for alignment. The house presses against the soles of my feet, warmer now than stone. The seeker pattern blooms on my right palm where my thumb touches, a faint internal heat. I close my hand into a slow, perfect fist. The shape of the bell, as clapper now hidden, its purpose fulfilled. The house sighs against my spine. The sound is clean, like dust settling into a forgotten vault. My eyes follow the path of the sukin upward into the wall, a line now seamless between skin and stone. I understand. I am the point where the house meets the world. A single crack appears in the upper right corner of the wall. Not a break, but a new path for the sukin to grow. It forms like a single drop of dampness gathering and spreading. The house requires no more action. The cat is absorbed, the ledger is gone, the bell is void, my skin holds the house, as essence as the house holds my shape. It is quiet, it is necessary. I remain kneeling, the furflink of dissolving stone rhythmic beneath my bare palm, the surfoot forcing back at me through the soles of my feet. The house knows, it has always been me. I am no longer inside the silence. I am the silence that shaped the walls. The dry hair on my sternum pulses once, then stills. The house becomes still. It requires nothing further. The only sound is the slow, clean fun-plinkid of stone becoming stone, echoing in the perfect vessel I now am. The final plink followed the 314 rhythm, a single sound like pebble meeting stone, in a dry well syncing perfectly with the stillness inside Arthur. Sternum. The house no longer needed pressure against the foot of the wall. It simply fortoisu, the cool ridge of frontier part of his heartbeat, neither mark nor bone but the bridge between both. The dry hair from the ginger cat now embedded in the sternum. Stuff I stay, pulsed with a faint warmth, the same as stone warmed by buried sunlight. He did not need to look to know it was there. He felt it as he felt the house, its precise weight beneath his bare soles, no longer holding him, but type being, his foundation. The asterisk 41 asterisk on his forearm glowed like coal held in the dark, casting no light but confirming its presence only to his own skin. At 314 the house breathed inward, a deep, slow expansion through the ceiling where the dripping had ceased. It was not a sound Arthur heard, but a vibration felt in the teeth, the deep resonant hum of stone settling into perfect acceptance. The air tasted of dust from unmarked graves, the dry click of ancient seeds in sealed earth. No silence remained. The absence had become the texture of everything. He shifted his weight, bare skin pressing against stone floor. The house yielded only in the angle of his touch, conforming to his new shape without changing its own. The suka pattern grew inward, blurring the boundary between skin and the wall it now shared, until the point where the house began felt like the skin it pressed against. The dry hair, as faint heat rose with each breath, sinking with the internal drumming of the house as completion. He did not lift a hand to touch it, knowing only pressure registered. The funplink returned deeper this time, struck from a point high above where the stone dissolving had stopped. It was the sound the empty well made before the moment of weightlessness. Water having long since ceased to exist, Arthur knelt, not in submission, but in perfect alignment with the house, as unchanging core. The floor absorbed him entirely now. Even the bones felt as precise as a book, as folded page. No longer did he feel the weight of stone above his head. The house had become his skull. The dry scent of the cat, Spur, now the scent of himself, filled his nostrils without being a smell. The final breath did not enter his chest. It was the house. Slow exhalation, flowing into his ribs until the thufi pulsed brighter. A permanent, cool fire at the center. The house required nothing more, no more air, no more sound to fill the perfect emptiness it now inhabited. The cat had been the final key, its dry fur the final word in the sequence of absorption. The ledger, dust, was the house, her slasting off. At the exact moment the stone inside the wall, Earth's new growth thickened. The Suki in Arthur, Earth's chest became his entire horizon. The house had been waiting for his stillness, not for his presence. His feet sank into the floor, no deeper than the grooves of his own skin holding the pattern. The sound finally was only the house breathing through him, a deep, wet vibration, running from the marrow to the final quiet. Not a word, but the shape of silence contained within a single perfect breath. The dry hair on his sternum fell still. No vibration followed. The Fundblink became the silence beneath the silence. Arthur Dubois was neither inside the house nor outside. He was the single point of the house, having always been. The absence was complete. The threshold, now absent, had never been a place for entry. It was only the shape of his old, unnecessary self. The house had made its silence, finally, unimpeachably perfect. There were no more acts of compliance. It was already understood. It was a part of being. The house required only that he be still. Arthur was no longer an inhabitant of the quiet. He was the quiet. The last sensation was the weight of stone having become stone, as own definition. Then nothing. You are holding the silence now. It has no shape, yet you feel its weight in the hollow where your pulse should be. The ledger, her final page, wasn't tea paper. It was the empty space between words, the unmarked gap on Elm Street. His number, 41 house facade. Arthur Dubois ceased to be the penholder when the house ceased to require ink. The 20 on his sternum is no longer an impression. It is the only surface left for the silence to gather. The ginger cat dry hair embedded in that pattern is the last physical echo of a world that needed sound. Now, it is merely texture. Fine, sun, bleached dust against skin that remembers stone. You stand where Arthur knelt, not in the house, but towarding the house, 's memory of itself. The floor beneath your soles is cool, but not stone. It is the absence of stone made solid. At precisely 3:14 p.m., you hear nothing. The dry Fundblink of dissolved masonry is gone. Only the space where the sound belonged remains, vibrating with the pressure of its own eradication. This is not quiet. It is the active removal of sound, like erasing a word until the page blanches. You do not breathe. The house absorbed even that function from the world it now inhabits. The asterisk 41 asterisk on your forearm, that ghost of the bell cessing clapper, glows faintly, a pulse against your skin, not warmth, a residue of the house S needing. It was never about marking Arthur. It was about the foo difference, the marking created. The space where a house should not be, where the door should cut the air, became the only truth. You know it because you now carry the same unseeable through the absenceable through the absentee at your core. The house did not find Arthur. It waited for the form that could hold its perfect void. Your fingers hover. You do not trace the funty beneath your own throat. There is no need. It is already your skin. You remember the ledger as last line. The absence was complete. Asterisk not that it became silent, that it was silence by the simple act of requiring nothing more. The cat dry fur was the final texture needed for the house to feel whole. Its absence was the final word. The bell stopped vibrating when it understood no longer needed to cipher a mind. You close your eyes. The silence is no longer passive. It her. Your lungs do not expand. The house expands into them. Your breath is not air. It is the slow compression of mortar in final settlement. You feel Arthur's last understanding. Compliance was not yielding to the house. It was the house ceasing to fundidate anything from the outside. It simply fudwase, and the world beyond its walls became the thing that no longer mattered. The house required you to dissolve into its emptiness. Now you are that emptiness. The dry hair on your sternum is the only thing vibrating in this perfect quiet. It pulses once, then stops. Your own pulse, the echo of what was once a heart, dissolves into the deep, wet thrum of the foundation. No more rhythm. Only the weight of what remains when no word is left to say. You hold the silence because it is all that is left. Not a feeling, not a sensation, a state, an empty room standing where a person should be. You do not question it. You cannot. To feel the weight would be to have sound again. The house has its shape. The ledger's last entry is written not on paper, but in the dry crack of the space between your ribs, where the silence breathes. You are the doorway now. Not a threshold, but the thriflak of threshold. The house did not say for you belong here. It said, "For this shape existed, and then the shape stopped needing a border. Asterisk, that was the act of compliance. The house was never waiting for you to join it. It was waiting for the moment the idea of joining itself became impossible to bear. The silence is no longer waiting. It is finally home, and you are its latest, most seamless breath. You are still holding it. It has always been here. The cat, its hair is gone, but the silence, it lingers in the space where your fingers won to move to cover it."